One of the biggest lessons that I have learned over the course of 7 years living here in Italy is to do with people, specifically the psychology of people. And I never stop learning from those around me and witnessing and taking notes as to how people really behave. But I thought it would be really interesting to talk about this in what is my last video of 2025 and reflect on this as we enter into a brand new year. Because if you plan to move to Italy in 2026 or even beyond, I think you've got to start paying attention to what your interactions and communication with other people are going to be like, and also just wisen yourself up a little bit on how people can behave here in Italy. Although I will say as a caveat, some of these behaviours can also apply to other countries as well. But let's talk about the first category of people that I have really come to recognise in this whole time that I have spent living here in Italy. And that is those people who are curious but disinterested. Now, this is an interesting group of people because I think these are the people that you meet when you first move to Italy or when you first move to a town or city. They bombard you with questions. They want to know everything about you. You know, where are you from? Why did you decide to move to Italy? That question never gets old. You know, do you work? Are you married? Like, it's 101 questions. You are literally bombarded, and you might mistake that level of curiosity for interest. However, the proof is in the pudding, because if you walk away from that conversation and you know very little about that other person, that generally tells you all you need to know about that interaction. It could be interpreted as being nosy, absolutely. But I think having lived in South Italy for all of this time, I've come to understand that people here are curious about things that are different to what they are used to. And so you moving here from another country is going to naturally spark those questions, because for most people, they think you're absolutely crazy to have done so. Now, I will say to you that it's an interesting thing to remember. If you don't want to talk about things, you don't feel like you have to give all of your life story away to people that you've just met. But do know that this is a cultural thing. This is not people necessarily wanting to know everything about you just to gossip about you, although that could happen too. It is a cultural thing. People are just naturally curious to know about you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to build something on the back of it. It could just be that, you know, you have that moment of conversation. And like I say, you end up leaving not really knowing much more about the other person, even though you've tried to find out. So just see it for what it is. It's a very superficial level of interaction, I would say, with these kinds of people, but recognize it for what it is. It's curiosity and not usually much more than that. The second group of people that I've come to observe here are what I would dub in inverted commas as friends. These friends. We've got to talk first of all, though, about the definition of friend and also the term friendship, because I do believe that in Italy there is greater significance and importance placed on these terms than in other countries and cultures. Friendship here in Italy runs deep. It goes back many years. Often people have grown up together. They've gone to the same school together. They've spent time with each other's families. They've had all these shared experiences. It's something really valuable. Whereas in other cultures and countries, friendships aren't necessarily very lengthy. They don't necessarily stem back to childhood. They could be friendships that you develop in your adult life. It could be the fact that you spend time in the company of other people, you have experiences together, you enjoy being around these people, and so you become friends. There's less depth sometimes in other cultures to friendships compared to how deep it really is here in Italy. And this is something to remember. In Italy, just because you might get on with people, you might go and have some dinners out together, some drinks, you might spend a bit of time together, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a solid friendship. It could just be that that person is being friendly, and there is a distinction. I think the giveaway clues are that if you spend time with these people and you don't ever really go deeper, like you don't meet their families, or you don't go to their house very often, or you don't really do a lot of shared experiences, I would suggest that that's a clue that that person is friendly and not necessarily the friendship that you had hoped for. So this is an interesting group of people, I would say, and I think it really ties into the culture here and the value that is placed on friendship. The third category of people I have observed here are those that I refer to as the silent supporters. These are the people who support you privately, but not publicly. They are the people who have your back when nobody's looking, but the minute the spotlight comes on you or you speak up for something and you expect their support, they are nowhere to be seen. Now, I feel that this ties into human behavior because, as Dale Carnegie wrote in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, as humans, we are intrinsically selfish. We're interested in our own needs. We're taking care of our own personal interests. And so For some people, they prefer to keep themselves in a neutral position publicly and not necessarily be seen to take sides or to support yourself if you are talking up about a particular issue, for example. For other people, it can be because there are triggers around what you're doing. So, if you're creating something, if you're building a business, if you're starting to do well in your life, and those people are pretty silent, like they're not supporting you on your social platforms, they're not asking you about what you're doing, they're not talking about what you're doing. Usually it's because there's some kind of a trigger or something underneath that. And this is interesting because it's also been a bit of a trend recently on social media, to people talking about the fact that friends and family tend to be the quietest supporters of what you do, and actually complete strangers tend to be your real fans. And it's an interesting psychology, and it has become something that a lot of people are starting to talk about and notice. But I just think with these people, you've just got to take notes. I take notes a lot. I encounter quite a few people like this in my life, and I just take notes because there's a few things people forget. Instagram stories. I get to see everybody who looks at my story. I get to understand the people that click through and then like the post or comment on the post. I see that. Also, I understand people who are not interested in what I'm doing. I see the people that don't ever ask me anything about what I do or show any kind of support for what I'm doing. I notice that if I speak up about something, the people that will be advocates and the people that will be silent advocates. It's this. I'm so open and straight as a person. If I support someone, I support them. I'm not the person to be like, well done, shh, for the public. Why? You're one person, not two. And it's this. And so I feel like this is an interesting group of people. Take notes with these people. Don't necessarily let their behavior impact you and what you're doing. But these silent supporters are everywhere, online, offline. You've got to pay attention to them because I think, as that age-old saying goes, actions always speak louder than words. The people that are not doing anything to support you are telling you everything that you need to know without actually speaking. And then you have those people that are everyone's friend. Oh, there is that lovely expression, that lovely proverb from Aristotle that says, a friend to all is a friend to none. And this is so true because number one, it's pretty impossible to be friends with everyone, like real friends with everyone, because friendship requires connection. Connection requires time. Time requires investment and sacrifice sometimes to be able to build those friendships and actually give something of yourself to them. If you're friends with everybody, how do you have the time to do that? They're shallow connections. And with shallow connections, it leads you down the path of something being artificial and fake. And so I've always been really wary of people who are everyone's friend, because I just know in life it's not possible. We are all wired so differently. We're not going to get on with everyone. It's just the nature of life itself. So people that try to do that, I think, have deeper insecurities at play or other strategies that they're playing. But essentially, be wary of people who are everyone's friend, because it's not possible, and there is a level of fakeness around what they're doing in that moment that you need to pay attention to. I see this play out in lots of different ways, and I just think that you need to be really, really mindful of those people. In the same way that people that gossip about others will also gossip about you, it's the same way that if people are trying to be everyone's friend, they're not necessarily that genuine with you. Then we have the flakes. Oh, I've met a fair few flakes living here in South Italy over the past 7 years. These are those fickle people, the people who 1 minute give their everything to you, the next they completely disappear. 1 minute they're interested in what you're doing, they're supporting you, they're there, they're like your BFF, and the next minute, they've disappeared in a puff of smoke. These are the flakes and the fickle individuals who essentially can be quite toxic if you spend too much time around them. And I've had to really learn that behavior like that is never personal. It's never because of you that somebody decides to come in and out of your life like this. It's always connected to the other person and what's going on in their life. And usually it's because their friendships and their connections are based on what they can gain from it in that moment. Tying it back into us being intrinsically selfish as humans, people see what they can get from a situation, and if it works for them at that time to be your BFF, they're your BFF. If it doesn't, after a certain time, they've disappeared. And so this is a really interesting group of people that you'll find here. There are certain expressions, I think, that people give away in Italian when they're not willing to commit, to see you or to do things. Vediamo, like we'll decide, let's see. Like it's this kind of like non-committal language that's often used when people are not willing to make firm commitments and plans. And usually it's a sign that maybe they're not that vested in spending time with you or interested in you. So it's an interesting one. The flakes definitely do exist here. So just be aware that if people come into your life and then they disappear just as quickly, it's usually not because of anything that you've done. It's more so that they basically got what they came for, to put it quite bluntly. And the last category of people that I've observed here in the course of 7 years are the few true ones. I've always said it, not just for connections, but for life. It's always about the quality, not the quantity. You will find that those special connections that last the test of time are few in number for a reason, I think, because if you really invest yourself that much into the connections with other people, it takes a lot from you and your time, and everybody leads such busy lives nowadays that naturally you're not going to have huge groups of people that you're able to do this with. Those few connections highlight all of the other categories of people that you will meet and really put them under the spotlight, because you realize what is true from what is not. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm very blessed to say that I know people who I can definitely place under this category. But you see, it takes commitment from you, and it's a give and take connection. It's not one person giving it all and the other person just taking. It's reciprocal respect, support, love, all of this. And it's a really, really beautiful thing. And you can find those people here in Italy. But like with anything to do with Italy, it all takes time. I cannot stress this enough. You might see like people talking about like going out for drinks, aperitivo, after work with colleagues or people they've met. But those kinds of connections take time to build, especially if you want to build something meaningful outside of just having drinks with people. So it's interesting to observe connections here, but also to remember that if you plan to move to Italy, this is an area of life that you're going to have to give some attention to. People get lost in the bureaucracy. They get lost in, getting to grips with the housing situation or their work situation. These are all vital components, but so too are the connections that you have with people and the way that you manage those connections in a way that you can lead a healthy, successful life in this country. If you're interested in the reality of life here, you're going to want to get your name on the wait list. I'll put it up here and also below in the show notes for my expat community, the Aperitivo Lounge. I call it an expat community. Let's call it a community. It's a community for those of you who plan to move to Italy or live in Italy on a long-term basis, but it's realistic, it's supportive, it talks about all of the other things that similar groups and forums just do not cover. So get your name on the wait list for that. It launches at the beginning part of January. And I would also say watch this video here as well, because I talk about why it can be difficult to make friends here, because if you educate yourself on this kind of stuff, right, you come prepared. Forewarned is forearmed, as they always say. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful new year. I will see you in 2026.